It's been quite a wild ride in the real estate market over the past several years, and in one way or another, we keep getting asked this question: is 2026 the year to finally buy a home? And in fact, 60% of Americans don't know whether now is a good time to buy or not. So in this video, I'm going to be covering what's happening in today's real estate market, what to expect for mortgage interest rates, what's happening in Oregon, and what to expect for price increases or decreases if that happens to be the case, what's the inventory picture, and finally, how to know whether you should buy a home or not, depending on your situation. So if you feel frustrated about not being able to afford a home, you're not alone. In 2025, the median age of a first-time homebuyer was 40 years old, which is the oldest it's ever been. Only 4 years ago, the median age of a first-time homebuyer was 33. And in case you're wondering, the increase is not due to an aging population. Younger buyers want to buy a home, but ever since mortgage rates went from under 3% in 2021 to over 7.5% and nearly hitting 8% in 2023, they literally just couldn't afford it. So to put those numbers in perspective, most home buyers for a $500,000 home, they would have gone from a mortgage payment of about $2,600 per month to paying $3,900 per month at a 7.5% interest rate. That's literally a 50% increase, and it's absolutely crazy. Now, while it would be great on paper if everyone could get an interest rate of 3%, we probably won't see anything below 5% for a very long time, and even 5% would be absolutely wonderful if we could get to that. But remember, 3% is great when that's your payment, but remember what the market was doing when that's what the interest rate was. Almost every home was getting multiple offers and going $50,000 to $80,000 over asking. And I think our record was we had 16 offers on one home. And I saw homes go $150,000 over asking. So if you were a buyer in that time, yeah, sure, if you could get a home, it was great. But most people weren't even able to get a home. I know a lot of people who tried, but they got outbid at every turn. So maybe we don't want to go back to that. But we obviously want rates that are lower than what they have been. So what can we expect for 2026? Well, the good news is, as of right now, the interest rate is nearly a full % less than what it was a year ago at this time. And the general consensus for mortgage rates in 2026 is that we should see rates hover around 6%. And when I say hover, I think we'll be seeing rates that are in the mid-6s, and I think we'll be seeing rates that are in the low 5s. And the average will probably be right around 6% or maybe a little bit above when we get to the end of the year. So for buyers, right now, that means compared to this time last year, you'd be saving around $200, maybe up to $250 on your monthly payment for the same priced home. Another way of looking at that is if you're saving that much, you could actually, for the same payment, afford a home that's maybe $30,000 to $40,000 more. So many buyers who have been priced out of the market will be entering the market. And one thing to remember is that many sellers are still offering seller concessions. This means that, you have your closing costs that you have to pay on top of your down payment, usually anywhere between 2 and 3% of the cost of your home. But the sellers can actually pay this so that you don't actually need to have that money at closing. Now, we'll see what happens in the spring as the market heats up, but that has been a strategy that many buyers have used either to save money out of pocket or even to pay for an interest rate that was far less than they would have been paying otherwise. We've seen a lot of buyers use this strategy to save hundreds of dollars per month, and I can't stress how important it is, honestly, for you to find a lender who can help you navigate this and find a good real estate agent who can help you do this. Now, if you're anywhere in the Southwest Portland area, for us, that's 45 minutes around Newburgh. We'd be happy to help you. And if you're not in that area, just find an agent who can really negotiate on your behalf. If you're in our area and have questions about this, you can reach me at the contact information at the bottom of the screen. Now, for home prices in Oregon, we haven't really seen a whole lot of change since 2022. Now, it's been fairly volatile. As you can see on the chart, it hasn't been flat. It's gone way up and way down. But really, when you look at the peaks and the valleys there, it's been about the same each year. And we haven't seen the growth like we normally see. The median home price in Oregon is about $550,000, but if you're an entry-level buyer, you should be able to find something in the $450,000 range. Again, when you look at the chart, you can see that during the spring, we're going to see prices go up. They're going to plateau in the summer and then come back down in the fall, all the way through Thanksgiving and the New Year. That's what happens every single year. So what we're looking at right now is going to be changing quite a bit as we get into the spring. Typically, prices in Oregon go up 5 to 6% per year, but with the higher interest rates, we haven't really seen that hold true. Again, last year, interest rates were around 7%, and with all the tariffs and all the other things happening politically, we saw quite a bit of stalling in the market, and prices started to go up, but then they actually came down quite a bit. In some markets, prices came down as much as 6%, which for a $500,000 home, that's like a $30,000 drop. Now, I want to remind you that with the higher interest rates, there were a lot of people who kept saying we were going to see a crash. And I kept saying, no, there's not going to be a crash for one simple reason. And that's because Oregon needs 29,000 new homes to be built every year. And we've only been seeing about half of that. So it's literally impossible for there to be a housing market crash if there's an extreme housing shortage. This is just basic supply and demand. However, what we did see is that prices, instead of going up, stayed mostly flat, and we saw the days on market triple from about 20 days to over 70 days on average. The bottom line here is that we're in a fairly balanced market that favors buyers in many cases. However, I think that will start tilting to favor sellers come spring, as long as interest rates stay fairly low. Ultimately, I think we'll see prices increase a net of 2 to 4% this year, and most of that is going to happen in the spring. Many buyers who have been waiting on the sidelines are going to start entering the market, and many sellers who have been sitting on low interest rates are going to finally hit a breaking point where they just can't stay in their situation any longer, and the lower interest rates we're seeing now are going to be enough for them to have a move make sense. So the past 3 years have all been about 20% below average in terms of how many homes sold, which means there's the backlog of people who want to sell but didn't. Nationally, the National Association of Realtors says we should see about 14% more home sales in 2026 than we did in 25, and that should hold true for Oregon as well. I would anticipate seeing 10 to 20% more sales in Oregon in 2026 than we saw in 2025. So we're going to be looking at lower interest rates, more options for buyers, and slightly more competition, but buyers might still have the upper hand, although only slightly. Now, I'm going to say again, it is going to be extremely important that you have an agent, whether you're selling or buying, who can really negotiate on your behalf. Over this past year, we've negotiated tens of thousands of dollars, whether it's in seller concessions or saving sellers tens of thousands of dollars when it comes to different repairs that buyers are asking for, and we're able to negotiate that down to only a few $100s. So that doesn't happen in every case, but it just goes to show how important it is to have good representation and having a good lender who's looking out for you. All right. Now for the question, should you buy a home in 2026? Well, almost every realtor is going to tell you that it's always a great time to buy, but that's just not true, as people who bought in 2022 at the peak of the market can tell you. At the Joyful Roberts Group, our tagline is, we help your family make the right move. And what that means is we want you to make the best decision for your situation. So it's not always a great time to buy. However, there are some questions that you can ask yourself to determine whether it is a good time for you to buy. So the very first question is, of course, can you afford it? Now, there's two main costs when you're talking from a lending perspective of what you need to have in order to buy a home. So there's an upfront cost and an ongoing cost. For upfront costs, most people are either going to do an FHA loan at 3.5% down, or they're going to do a 5% down payment. So for a $500,000 house, a 5% down payment is going to be $25,000. There are also closing costs that if you're paying your closing costs, it's going to be usually anywhere between 2 and 3%. So prepare to pay anywhere between 6 to 8% as far as savings, or $25,000 to $30,000 saved as a good rule of thumb. Now, for the ongoing costs, even if rates do come down a little bit, most buyers are going to be looking at a payment anywhere between $2,700 for a first-time home up to $3,200, again, depending on your credit, how much you're putting down, what the interest rates are doing at that time, and of course, how much the home costs. but just say we're looking at an entry-level home, $450,000. Really a good amount to expect is probably about $3,000 per month, maybe a little bit less, and we might be able to negotiate your rate, but honestly, you're going to be paying probably at least $2,700 per month. So if you can afford at least a $2,700 per month payment and you have $25,000 to $30,000 saved, then you're probably in a good position to be able to buy a home. Number 2, are you comfortable with utilities, maintenance, and repairs? Now, these can add up, and if you've been renting, your landlord might have been paying for a lot of these things. So you got to prepare for home maintenance, you got to be able to fix something if it breaks, and you got to pay for utilities. And so you just got to make sure that you're comfortable with this and aware of what these costs are. The third question, this is a pretty important one, is how long do you plan on being in your home? I've talked to some people and they've said, well, maybe I want to buy my first home and then after a few years, I'll upgrade and buy another one. Well, there's costs associated with buying homes, selling a home, and then buying another home. And honestly, if you're not going to be in your home for at least 5 years, it's probably better to rent. Now, in some cases, if a market appreciates a lot or you put a lot of sweat equity into it, maybe in 2 to 3 years, you might recuperate that. We did see that in the past decade before 2022, that prices were going up quite a bit. But really, the ideal is to be in your home at least 5 years. The fourth question is, do you believe in the future of the market? Now, while I can talk about all the reasons why the market is doing well from the real estate side, you have to believe in this. You have to be confident that the market is not going to crash. So that said, I want to point out a few considerations, and I didn't go too much into the details in this video, but between there being a housing shortage, there being pent-up demand, there being decreasing interest rates, real estate prices are going to start increasing again. The average over the past 60 years in Oregon has been between 5 and 8%. We've seen that stagnate as interest rates doubled and almost tripled, but as rates come back down, we are going to see prices go up. Now, the reason I say this is because if you're waiting for the housing market to crash and you're putting off buying a home, you're probably going to end up being disappointed, and your home that would be $500,000 right now is going to be $510,000, $520,000 in the next year or two. And even if interest rates do come down, those gains are going to be lost by a more expensive home. So if you do think 2026 is the year for you to finally buy a home and you want someone in your corner negotiating for you and making sure that you get a good deal, navigating the process, please reach out to me or our team. You can find our information at the bottom of the screen there. We would be happy to help you out. You can also find more information at thejoyfulrobertsgroup.com. Well, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.